Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Nun Amud Beis at the very top. Our Mishnah had taught us when a person is traveling and before Shabbos comes, he realizes that he's not going to make it to his house. And therefore he's 4,000 amos away. He says that there's an Elon that is 2,000 amos away. And he wants to then say, Makom tachtov shvisosi. The Mishnah says, Lo omar klum. To which Rav explains that means Lo omar klum kol iker. He's not even koine shvisa mitachas ha'ilon 2,000 amos away. Now Abaye comes to explain why that is so. Omar Abaye, Lo shonu ela bi'ilon shetachtov yud beis amma. Which we said before that there is two different explanations of Rav. We said that Rav says because you did not define the Daled Amos that is Tachas Ha'ilon. Comes along, Abaye now explains when is that so? When the Elon Mitachtov has an area of 12 Amos. Then he says, then it's considered to be something that he's not Koine Shvisa because it's not defined. Aval Be'ilon she'ein tachtov yud beis amo, harei miktsas beisoy nikar. If it is less than 12 amos, then we can say that it is defined. Because if it's 12 amos, then you can break it down to 3 areas of 4 amos each. Then it's not defined when it's 12 amos or more. When he says mitachas ha'ilon, we don't know what he's talking about, which daled amos. But when it's less than 12 amos, then we know that there's always going to be an overlapping amma from the middle. That means if you're going to then use the arba amos to the north, it'll also have 1 amma that will overlap to the middle. Arba amos of the south will have 1 amma that's going to overlap to the middle. So therefore that's enough of a defining point to say that he's going to be koine shvisa. So therefore again, Abaye is claiming that the Elam that we're talking about has an area of 12 amos or more. But less than 12 amos, even Rav would agree that he is, yes, koine shvisa underneath that tree. Maskif lo Rav Huna bered Rav Yehoshua. He challenges Abaye and he says, Mimai de ba'ar boy mitziyosa kamesayim. From where do you see that the middle is going to then be defined as his daled amos? Just because you might have 1 amma that will overlap, if it will be on the north or on the south side. Mimai de ba'arbo mitziyosa kamesayim. Dilma ba'arboy dahai giso ba'arboy dahai giso kamesayim. You don't know whether he's going to be using the daled amos of the north, and therefore maybe when he said he wants to be koine shvisa underneath the tree, so the daled amos of the south is going to then be the daled amos. Granted that the middle will then be 1 amma of the south, but he intended maybe the north or the south, and we don't know which one. So therefore you cannot say that it's definable by saying the fact that there's 1 amma that will overlap to one side or the other. Elo omer Rav Huna bered Rav Yehoshua lo shono ela bi'ilan shetachtov ches amos. What we're talking about is when the area underneath the tree is 8 amos. That's when Rav said that is not definable, and therefore he is not koine the shvisa when he says mitachas ha'ilon, because underneath the ilon is 8 amos. Maybe it's this 4 amos, or maybe it's that 4 amos. Aval be'ilon shetachtov zayin amos, but when it's less than 8 amos, it's only 7 amos. Harei miktzas beison niker. Then his residence is going to be recognizable. In other words, it's going to be defined. Because then you vadai have 1 amma in the middle that's going to be overlapping. In other words, before when we said 12 amos, less than 12 amos, 11 amos, so then it could be that the middle amma would be of the north 4 amos or the south 4 amos. But we don't know which one. Over here we know certainly that the 7 amos will have to then include 1 middle amma. Either way, whichever side you go, there's always going to be the middle amma of the 4 amos. So whenever you say 4 amos mitachas ha'ilan, it's always going to encounter the middle amma, whereby that will then define, even according to Rav, a place of shvisa, and therefore he's going to be koine underneath the Elon when it's less than ches, when it's going to be zayin amos. The Gemara now brings, we said two different opinions when it said that Lo Omar Klum, according to Rav, we just explained, Lo Omar Klum is Lo Kol Iker. At all, he's not koine shvisa whatsoever. When he says mitachas ha'ilon, and according to what we just said, that means what's going to be 8 amos or more. According to Shmuel, it means that he's not koine, when Lo Omar Klum means he's not koine shvisa for the bias, but he is koine mitachas ha'ilon. And therefore, the Gemara brings a brisa like each one. Tanya kavose de Rav, v'tanya kavose de Shmuel. Again, Tanya Kavasi the Rav, we have a brisa that like Rav, who says that he's not even koine shvisa mitachas ha'ilon. Again, when it's talking about an ilon that's 8 or more amos. Mishe b'derech v'chosh chaloi. The brisa says when he's traveling on the road and it gets to be then dark, in other words, before he can get to his house, and he's then 4,000 amos apart. V'haya makir ilon or geder. And he recognizes a certain tree or a stone wall. My shvisa should be underneath, let's say, this elon. Loy omar klum. It says over here, loy omar klum. Either according to Rabbah means kol iker, right? Each one explains their way. But the Brisa says, like the Mishnah, lo omar klum. Aval im omar shvisasi b'makom ploini. The Brisa continues to say, if he says that my shvisa should be in a certain place, he can walk until he gets to that makom. When he arrives at that place, he can then travel, he can walk within the entire area, which is enclosed, as the Brisa will explain, and 2,000 amos beyond. Now the Brisa explains how he can walk in the entire area because it is enclosed. Because we're talking about a place that is defined, like a tail, a mound that is going to be 10 tfachim high, whereby it'll be defined as an enclosed, as having mechitzos. Thereby he can go ahead and walk within the entire area, providing that it's not going to be beyond 5,000 amos, which would be a karpef. V'chein bika shehi amuka asara v'hi midaled amos v'ad beis osayim. Similarly, when it comes to a valley that is 10 tfachim deep, again you'll have mechitzos, and therefore, providing it's not going to be beyond beis osayim, 5,000 amos, then you could go ahead and walk freely within the whole area. A place that's not defined, ein lo ela daled amos, then he will only have daled amos. Says the Brisa, now to explain, if there's two people and one wants to be koine shvisa with the other, can he do so? Brisa explains, echad makir v'echad sheino makir. One is makir and the other one is not makir. That means one's makir, let's say the elon. The other one is not makir. The one who's not makir can give over his shvisa to the other one and allow him to be kind of shvisa for him. Our shvisa is in a certain place. Now, what is that certain place? Now the Brisa will define, which will be a proof for Rav. What does it mean that he can be koine a shvisa when he says shvisasi b'makom ploini? How is it defined? When he's going to then define it. Daled amos shekova. 4 amos that he is koveya. But if he doesn't define the exact daled amos, then he's not going to be able to then move beyond daled amos. He won't have makom shvisa. So now we have a brisa that clearly will support Rav. Again, because Rav requires that a person who declares a shvisa b'makom ploni, like we saw in the Mishnah and in this brisa as well, that's going to be underneath a tree, it has to be defined which daled amos. Let us say this is a refutation against Shmuel. Omar lach Shmuel will say back to you, Hocha b'mayaskinon, kigon di'ika mimkoin raglov va'ad ikoroi, trei alfei va'arba garmidi. He says we're talking about a case over here when a person has 2,000 amos from where he is situated until the trunk of the tree, plus another 4 amos, which is the maximum amount of place a person can walk. He has 2,000 amos, and from the Makom Shvis, another Dalet amos, altogether 2,004 amos. So that's what we're talking about. Because if you establish it to be on the other side, the Elon of the tree, then come lay lebar mitchuma. It'll be beyond his 2,004 amos. And then he won't have a place whatsoever. If he defines the Dalet amos that's only until the tree trunk, then he will then have a techum. He'll be able to then walk the 2,000 plus 4 amos. However, if not, then lo matzi also he won't be able to go whatsoever. He won't even be able to go beyond his Dalet amos. And therefore Shmuel explains up the Brisa l'shitasoi. Tanya kavasi de Shmuel. Now we have a Brisa that supports Shmuel. Shmuel says, the Brisa says, ve'erav l'shtei ruchois kibedume shehu me'arvin l'shtei ruchois. A person made a mistake and he made an eruv in 2 different directions. Let's say one going to the north and one going to the south. So let's say he put an eruv of 1,000 amos to the north and 1,000 amos to the south. Or he instructed his servants to go ahead and make him Eruvin. Again, one direction, the other direction. Echad Erov alav letzafim, echad Erov alav ledaram. One to the north and one to the south. Mahalich letzafim ke'eruva ledaram. He can only go to the north to the extent that the south will permit him. And therefore, in our case, since he made an Eruv to the north, so he can go only 1,000 amos to the north, because he has an Eruv to the south, 1,000 amos. So he can't go beyond that 1,000 amos to the north, because then it'll be beyond the permissibility of the south. And vice versa. He can only go down 1,000 amos. If he's in the middle of the tchum, meaning to say it's 2,000 amos to the north and 2,000 amos to the south, then he can't even walk 1 amma, because it'll be in the wrong direction. If he has 2,000 amos to the north, he can't go 1 amma to the south, right? And vice versa, because they'll be going beyond the other one's restriction. The Brisa goes on to say, so the Gemara says, this clearly goes like Shmuel, because this Brisa states that one of these, we don't know which one, but one of these, Eruvin, is valid. Even though he did not define, nonetheless, it's going to be valid. So that's clearly a refutation on Rav. Answers the Gemara, Rav Tana Hu Upalik. We find in the Gemara, in various places, that it says like over here, Rav, although he's an Amora, but since he was also in the beginning times of the Tanoim, he has the status of a Tana who can argue on another Tana. And therefore, even though this Brisa clearly states like Shmuel, but Rav argues on this Tana in the Brisa, and therefore it's not going to be a refutation against Rav.